Thank you, and I want to welcome all of you on behalf of the Oak Cliff Conservation League for coming out on such a dark and stormy night. It's very brave of everybody to be here tonight. There are some business things I want to take care of and to tell you how we're going to do this evening. But first I wanted to introduce an elected official who is here, Texas State Representative Rafael Anchia, who is somewhere. Rafael, there he is. Thank you. We also have two former school board members that are present. Elizabeth Jones. Elizabeth, back there. And also Trini Garza is here. What? I'm sorry. Oh, and Jerome Garza. Back there. So we want to thank you for your service. We know that's a very important position that you have, and we all are grateful for your service. Before I introduce our outstanding candidates, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen this evening. We're going to begin with 5-minute opening statements from each candidate. It'll be followed by a Q&A session, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and it'll then be followed by a 3-minute closing statement. Ellie is our vice president, and she's going to be our timekeeper. Michael is a former president of the league, and he will be the roving microphone person. And we have many people I know who are going to be wanting to ask questions. So I would respectfully ask that if you have comments or statements or information you want to share with one of our candidates, please wait until afterwards. They'll be here to speak with you individually and to sort of respect that, and to, when it's your turn to ask a question, please ask the question, because I want everyone to be able to have that opportunity to do that. So now I'd like to begin with our opening statements from our candidates, and we did this by the NFL system. We just picked a number out of a hat as to who goes first making the opening statement, and that person and candidate is going to be Mr. Isaac Paz. Paz, sorry.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Just want to make sure everyone can hear me before I start. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Perfect, okay, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for braving the rain. I know it's a little terrible outside with the clouds, but thank you all for taking the time to have a conversation about education. My name is Isaac Foz, and I'm running for school board to represent District 7. And I'm running because I want to help build a 21st century education that gives every student in District 7 an opportunity to succeed in college or career. A little bit about myself. My parents immigrated here from Mexico in search for a brighter future for themselves. And that brought them to Dallas, specifically Oak Cliff. And Oak Cliff is where I grew up. It's where I went to 3 schools, and it's where I was a volunteer for about 10 years here in Oak Cliff. And it's really been through education that's changed my life, because my parents always emphasized the importance of an education. When I was growing up, I worked in construction with my dad, and a quick shout out to my dad who's here tonight. I worked in construction with my dad, and he would say, if I don't want to work outside in these hot Texas summers, and we know it gets hot here in Texas, then I should stay in school. And that's what I did. I graduated high school, and I started at the Dallas County Community College District, where I was able to work and take classes, and I transferred to the University of Texas at Austin. And then I received my Juris Doctorate from Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston, Texas, and was also fortunate to participate in a law program in Madrid, Spain. But education changed my life and really gave me different opportunities. And those opportunities include working on behalf of our communities in Austin, Texas at the State House for State Representative Rafael Anchia, who's here tonight. We passed a bill that helped give enforcement teeth to close massage parlors down, because some of these massage parlors were hubs for human trafficking. It also gave me the opportunity to work in Washington, D.C. at the White House as a President Obama appointee, focusing on trying to rebuild America's middle class, and more importantly, lowering the unemployment rate. And when I was working in Austin or DC, the common conversation I had with various stakeholders and organizations that we're always partnering with was a need for a quality education and a prepared workforce. And that didn't happen in silos. It happened in Dallas, DC. It happens in Oak Cliff today. So today I work at the Dallas County Community College. I'm bilingual, I'm an attorney. And it's important that I work at the college because our mission is very similar to DISD. We want to help students succeed. And that's important because we know that by 2020, 65% of the jobs in this economy require a post-secondary education. Let me repeat that again. 65% of the jobs in 2020 require a post-secondary education. So how do we get there? I'll make three quick points. One, we have to have a vision to help students succeed, and that means career and technical education, dual credit, dual language, and it also means we have to have facilities that can support these programs and these initiatives that we're doing. Two, we have to recruit, reward, and retain great teachers and principals. Our teachers are committed not only to our students, but they're also committed to our communities. So we have to give them the resources and the support that they need. Recently, my brother was a teacher here in District 7, and he left. And one of the reasons he left is he said he felt like he didn't have any backup. So we have to make sure we give these teachers backup. Number three, I like to focus on good governance and advocacy. And this is also important because we need a school board that's focused on student achievement and outcomes, not on theatrics. We want to make sure that we have a school board member that can go to Austin, can go to Washington, and advocate for our students, for our parents, and for our teachers, so we can get funding back for DISD. Because we know the party in power in Austin over the last few years has cut public funding, and we never restored it. In 2011, they cut $5.5 billion in funding, and it hasn't been restored today, and we need to fight for some of that funding. It's not too long ago, my grandmother, when she immigrated here, she worked at a public school cafeteria, here in DISD inside District 7. And when she worked in the cafeteria, I don't think she ever would imagine that just one generation later, her grandson would be running to represent that very same school. And not only that school, but to represent all our families and all our neighborhoods that are 31 schools inside District 7. So that's why I'm here with you today. I'm asking for your support, I'm asking for your help, and I'm asking for your vote. Because together we can keep the promise of a quality education, and together we can build a 21st century school district that helps every student succeed in college or career. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you to the students and all the young people who are here. I think it's important that you get involved and have a civic participation. And I ask for you on May 7th to please vote FOS. Thank you very much. Gracias por estar aquí.
Thank you. And before we hear from our next candidate, I'd like to introduce another elected official who has joined us. Scott, I don't see you. City Council Member Scott Griggs. There. Thank you for being here. Audrey, would you like to begin?
Good evening. I'm Audrey Pinkerton. I'm a candidate for school board in District 7, and I'm here because we can do better for our kids. I have 26 years of experience with this district. I was a student, K through 12, and then a parent of two girls that have gone all the way through DISD schools. And I've seen a lot of really good things in this district, and I've seen a lot of challenges. The last few years, I've seen some changes in the teaching and learning environment, and although they were born of noble goals, they've had some unintended consequences. We've lost 2/3 of our teachers and 60% of our principals in the last 3 years. And the problem is, even with this disruptive change, we're not moving the needle on student achievement. We're not preparing our students for success in college and career. Let me give you an example. 50% of DISD graduates enroll in college, but only 11% have the basic knowledge that they need to be successful in college, and only 20% earn degrees within 6 years. We can do better. Some of you know me from my work in the community. We moved to Oak Cliff in 1999, and I've been very involved ever since then, working in my neighborhood associations with Crime Watch, helping to put together a school fair when I started to see that some of my friends were moving out of Oak Cliff because they couldn't find good schools. I wanted to let them know about the good options that we have in our area. I've also gone through training and become an advocate for Dallas CASA, and I work as a court-appointed special advocate, advocating for the needs of children that have been taken away from their parents and are under CPS custody for their physical, their health, and their educational needs. For the last 14 years, I've been a parent and a very active volunteer in my children's schools. I've gotten to know the teachers, the principals, and parents of every background, and we have worked together to face the challenges that all the schools in District 7 are facing. How to get more parents involved, how to get the district to fix that big maintenance problem, how to get basic supplies for the teachers. As a professional, my job has been to lead struggling businesses and get them headed in the right direction. DISD is struggling. And we know that manufacturing is not the same as education. We know that students are not widgets. But change management is really about people. And the principles that applied in my career that helped me get results still apply here. Here are some things that we need to work on. First, people. We need great teachers and great principals. In order to do that, we need to make DISD a place that great teachers want to work. Second, we need parents and community partners. Parent involvement is one of the biggest indicators of student success. Students with involved parents do better on tests, they do better on graduation rates, and they're more likely to earn a college degree. And community partners step in where parents either can or won't do their part. The third thing is place. Every student needs a safe, welcoming, nurturing learning environment, and that means we have to do a very good job being efficient and effective with our resources, and that means the bond program and also our maintenance operating budget. We can do better for our kids. I'm Audrey Pinkerton, candidate for school board in District 7. I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. I'm going to begin with the first question from the podium. It's my understanding that the two-way language program has been very successful in the schools, and there's 26 new campuses that are going to be added this August. And my question is, how do the parents know where and how to enroll their students? Because they recommend enrolling the students in pre-kindergarten or first grade, which means they're 4 and 5, maybe 6 years old. So how do we advertise that? How do the parents know? Because the sooner that they're enrolled in the program, the more successful it is for them. Audrey, would you like to begin with that?
Sure, I'll start out with that question. That you're really hitting the nail on the head in terms of an issue for the district, because there are a lot of great programs that do begin in pre-K, and so how do we get the word out to those parents? So I know for parents that have an older child in the district, they're getting notified through a lot of the channels that we have for parents, through the automated phone system, flyers in the backpack, that sort of thing. There are announcements on boards outside of schools announcing registration dates, not only for dual language, but also for pre-K. And I know for pre-K, the district is doing a lot of advertising on billboards and local signage, just to let people know. I haven't seen that for dual language, but I think it's something that we could do.
Sure, dual language is very important because especially in our communities, if we're going to have biliterate and bilingual students, it's important that they participate in dual language. I know that I guess registration starts next week, April 4th, and there's also a fair that starts on April 9th. But I agree that we have to really come up with a good strategy to make sure that we're informing all the parents and individuals, because we have to leverage technology. I mean, I think automated phone calls are great. I think we have to do mail and billboards, but what are we doing on the social media front, right? Are we using what a lot of young parents use today, which is Instagram, social media, Twitter, et cetera. So we really have to come up with sort of different ideas and be creative on how to get that word out, because we have great programs. And you're right, by next year, we're going to double our dual language programs. And the great thing about District 7, there's going to be 6 more schools inside District 7 offering dual language.
Wonderful, thank you. Now we'll open the floor to questions, please. And please, again, confine yourself to questions. Anne, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you. As a former school board member, I really appreciate both of you running for school board. I know what that means, and I appreciate the sincerity of your intentions. One of the things that DISD needs, maybe above all, is broad public support in order to improve schools. And as an observer of the Dallas School Board for several decades, I think one of the impediments to public support has been some of the dysfunction on the board. Not all members, but enough members that there was not a team working together for the benefit of kids like these. So my question tonight is, what would each of you do to address that and to be part of a solution for that, and to sincerely find common ground and build relationships within the board so that you can then go outside and build external relationships to support this school district? Thank you.
We'll begin this time with Isaac.
Go first? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your question and thank you for your service. You know, what happens in DISD, we have to make sure that we're sharing the good news that goes on there because you're right, we hear about all the bad things that happen and sometimes we don't share all the positive things that happen at DISD. And we have to make sure that we're being advocates and spreading that word, and not just at the school board, but parents and students and teachers are doing the same thing. I think one of the ways we can continue to build broad support is, you're right, we have to build those coalitions internally and externally. Because if we want to make sure that we're doing the best for our students, we have to bring other partners to the table. We have to make sure that we engage different organizations. I had a conversation with a group called Readers to Leaders and how they want to work with DISD, but they weren't able to work for DISD because of administration or some other hiccups. So let's go out and make sure that we do make these partnerships happen and make sure we do have these that are reality for our students. And then as far as the dysfunction goes, I mean, you know, I always like to share the story about Atlanta and Dallas when they went for the Olympics. You know, people in Atlanta showed the business and civic organizations their videotapes of the Dallas City Hall meetings. And that's all it took to convince them that the Olympics had to go to Dallas. They said, do you want to do business in Dallas having a city hall like that? So what we have to make sure that we don't want other parents seeing our school board, whether they have theatrics or sort of, like you said, maybe some dysfunctional members. We have to make sure that we have a school board that's there to focus on student achievement, making sure that they're doing what's the best for the students because, quite frankly, our students need it, our parents demand it, and our community deserves it.
Thank you. Audrey?
Yeah, let me address the dysfunction on the board. And I have 25 years of experience working in corporate America at an executive level. I can tell you that there is a lot of the same dynamic happening in that environment as well, where people have different agendas and they have to learn to get along. So I want to talk a little bit about some things and some techniques and approaches that have been very useful for me. The first thing that's most important is to focus on common goals. We all want the same thing. We want student achievement. That's really important. And so if we can bring ourselves back to that, then it creates this alignment and gets us at least in the same room. The other things that are important are respect and to seek to understand the other person's point of view, because if you want to be understood, first you have to understand where that person's coming from, and it helps you connect better. The other thing is that my background is in engineering, and so I tend to rely a lot on facts and data, and so that can really bring us back to what are the facts and get away from the emotion that people may be feeling about their particular point of view.
Thank you. Would like a question that will go to this side of the room. Gentleman in the front. Oh, sorry.
I'm Eric Gonzalez. I'm from Griner Middle School. My question is, what did you guys do to give us better food?
Can we go first? Okay. Yes, that's an important question. I've eaten that food. It's been a few years since my girls have wanted to invite me to Parents' Day, but when I did go, I can tell you that I didn't find the food very appetizing. And I think that's an important question. I think it's another area where we can do better. I know there was a fellow parent that I was a parent with at my children's elementary school who had an idea to bring in a program that brought really healthy, nutritious food with no fillers, low sugar. It had been proven to work in Wisconsin and other places to improve behavior, actually, because the kids weren't all sugared up. And she gave up on the idea because of the bureaucracy within DISD and navigating the Food and Nutrition Services Department. But certainly as trustee, that's something that I would have a lot more influence over. So I'd like to see a program like that investigated and hopefully introduced into the schools.
Thank you, Joven Gonzalez, for your question. As a former Griner student, I just want to say that I really enjoyed the Fiesta salad when they have it. So I don't know if they still have Fiesta salad, but that was my favorite thing that they used to have. It is important that we have nutritious meals, and I know DISD has been recognized for having nutritious meals on the menu. But one of the things we also have to focus on is why are students eating so early and then hungry later on? We also have to make sure that we're focusing on some of those facility needs so that when a student in 8th grade is eating early or 7th grade or even in high school, that they're not hungry again at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And especially for big kids like myself, I was a big kid even in junior high, and by the time I was in 2 o'clock, I was already starving, and I had friends that were in athletics, and they were really hungry by the time 2 o'clock came around. So we do have to pay closer attention and really talk to the community and talk to the parents and see what other options are there. Do we work with other organizations to maybe bring healthy snacks that are tastier, that aren't filled with sort of junk that does bad for our bodies? So we just have to be a little bit more creative. And the important thing about the meals is that we know that it's important that we don't have any sort of sugar or sodas and things like that, because we still, at the end of the day, we have to maintain our kids healthy, because that way they're able to eat healthy and be able to focus. But we also need to take into consideration there are neighborhoods where there are food deserts. So what are we doing when those kids leave the school? Some of our schools provide dinner and after-school food for our students. So we have to make sure that we're also addressing sort of the other situation about partnering with the city of Dallas and other organizations to address that problem.
Thank you. This side of the room now. Nola Ray.
My name is Nola Ray Smith, and I taught for DISD District for 25 years. And for the past 2 years, I've been retired. And I'd like to thank, first of all, the Oak Cliff Conservation League for allowing us and to sponsoring this event so we can speak to our candidates. And we thank you again. I personally thank you, Ms. Pickerton and Mr. Foss, for being here to address us. I have a question that I'd like for you both to address. What have you done publicly to advocate for teachers within the last 2 years? Please be specific with examples, and I thank you so much.
Isaac, I think.
Sure. That's a great question. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for the question, and thank you for your service to DISD. As I mentioned earlier, my brother, until recently, was a teacher here in District 7. And so I always like to think that the first thing I did was always listen and be a sounding board. Because as a trustee, we have to make sure that we're listening to our teachers. They have the experience, they're on the ground, and they see every day what goes on at our schools. I have a good friend of mine, Mr. Ortiz, who's also a teacher at Stockard, and some other friends in District 7. And the way it is, we have to listen, and we have to provide, listen to their input. So one of the things, the way I've advocated for teachers is, like my history teacher at Griner, he wasn't able to have a history trip to San Antonio and Austin. This is a great experience for students in Oak Cliff who never get the opportunity. Some of these students never have left Dallas, much less Oak Cliff. And it's an experience for them to be able to see history in person, and that changes a student's life. And more importantly, it's the interaction and the camaraderie with their fellow students and some of the chaperones that help them. So what I did recently was I tried to advocate for the trip because I knew the importance of that visit to San Antonio and Austin. And I know there's students in here today who have benefited from those trips going to San Antonio and Austin. So that's one of the most recent things I've done.
A couple of years ago, I started to hear from teachers that I knew and respected, people that either I knew personally or through my work in the community, or teachers who had taught my children, teachers that I knew were very dedicated and very affected at what they did, and they expressed some concerns about some of the policies that had been introduced. They talked about specific examples where the policies were really contrary to student learning, and it was something that any of us would understand. The examples that they gave, things like curriculum that wasn't aligned with the state standards, rules for classroom engagement that didn't allow them to really fully teach the kids the way they needed to be taught. And so what I did was help to organize some meetings with our trustee and ultimately all of the Oak Cliff trustees to help them understand what was going on and educate them. Also went and spoke to the board on a number of occasions to try to help the trustees understand some of these unintended consequences and make some corrections to it.
Thank you. This side of the room, the gentleman on the end.
Excuse me. Good for both of you running for office. It's not easy to be elected office. Charter schools, very controversial. A 3 months ago, there was a major protest led by Trustee Foreman, many speakers going to City Hall, not wanting a charter school in South Dallas, in her area, and a lot of charter schools in her area. I think the message was off point, meaning Harriet Earhart, who's a well-known legislator and educator, said it was never the intent of the state legislature for charter schools to compete with public schools. Would you be for going back to the state legislature and having them make sure that charter schools stop competing with DSD, with public schools, and go back to the original mission of supporting and helping public schools?
What I would say about this is that the charter schools issue is really a symptom of a deeper problem. It's a symptom of a lack of confidence in the public schools. And the charter school issues are decided at the state level. Rafael Anchia is here, so if you have any opinions about this, please let him know. As a DISD trustee, what I can do is work to make sure that every DISD school competes with the charter schools and in many ways is even better. So how are we going to do that? I think here's some things that charter schools offer or promise to people that go there. One is a safe environment. There are parents today who are choosing charter schools over DISD schools, even though the charter school has lower academic performance. It's because they don't feel like their child will be safe in that particular school. So we need to address those schools where kids don't feel safe. Stockard Middle School is an example of a school here in District 7 where 30% of the parents would not agree with the statement, "My child is safe at school." That's not right. So we need to address bullying and violence, look for programs that are working in schools and replicate those in other schools. The other thing that they promise is a college preparatory environment. So at every single school, we need to make sure that we're giving a rigorous program, plenty of homework to kids, and making sure that they're really on track to go to college if that's what they wish. When they get into middle school, they'll be making choices about classes that they'll be taking. If they want to go to college, they need to be ready for pre-algebra in 7th grade. Are we getting those kids there? And I think today in many schools, we're simply not. The third thing is that a lot of charter schools have brand new facilities. They're issuing bonds that are guaranteed by us, the taxpayers, and they're building a lot of new facilities. And so if you walk into a DISD school and it's run down and dilapidated, and you walk into a charter school and it's bright, shiny, and new, which one would you pick, all things being equal? So we need to make sure that we're doing a good job of maintaining. I've seen some really nice, well-maintained DISD schools, and I've seen some that really need some work. So we need to make sure that we're effective at doing that.
Correct. Thank you for that question. I want to say off the bat that charter schools are not the answer for 160,000 students that call DISD home. Charter schools are going to take about 26,000 of the students from DISD every year. 27,000 DISD students are in charter schools today. But what we need to do is we need to make DISD the destination school district. We need to make sure that we're improving our facilities, that we're offering programs, and that we're preparing our students. Because I think parents want to have that option. And I'm never going to second guess or criticize a parent wherever they decide they want to send their children to school. But the best way to do that is to make sure we make DISD a destination school district. And I do want to thank, I know you mentioned Representative Anchia and fighting for public education. I do want to thank him for being in Austin, for fighting for public education. But I do have to disagree on one thing. As a trustee, we have to be the face for DISD. As a trustee, we have to be an advocate for our school districts. And when we're in Austin, we're the face that they have to see. Because if we're not fighting in Austin for funding and to improve our schools, then who's going to do it? That's what we signed up to do as a school board trustee, is to advocate not only for our students, not only for our parents and teachers, but for our schools and our facilities. And if we're going to compete with charter schools, then we need to make sure we have those facilities that compete with them. And a couple of things on safety. I agree. We need to make sure our schools are safe. It's very important. Because today and tomorrow, there'll be a student, a third grade student at Rosemont that has to walk outside to go to the lunchroom every day. That has to walk outside to go to the gym. That has to walk outside if they're feeling ill to go to the nurse. That's not safety and that's not security. Another thing that we can also do is we have to make sure we have these programs in place at our schools, like dual language, dual credit. Because if we offer those options, offer those programs for families, then we will start welcoming back more parents to DISD.
Thank you. A question from this side. How about in the back of the room, the gentleman in peach color on the back?
Hi, my name is Rob Shearer, and I've got 3 girls that will be DISD students very shortly. My question for you all is economic diversity. A study that I read recently said the #1 thing that we can do to impact students is to increase economic diversity within the schools. And it seems like in our neighborhood, we've gerrymandered the affluence into a single school, and that's left schools like Hogg and Reagan and Winnetka and Idaho out of the loop. And so I'm wondering, first, what can we do to change that? And then second, do you have any other creative ideas for how we can improve our other neighborhood schools in addition to Rosemont?
No, thank you so much for that question. You're right. I mean, we need economic diversity. There's enough research that shows if we have an economic blended program in campus, then we have more students that are able to succeed. We know there's a statistic, and it's kind of a crazy statistic. It's 85% of Dallas schools have a student population of 80% or more that live in poverty. And that's crazy. And so when we look at our schools and what are we doing, because you're right, it's great that we have a gym in certain parts of our neighborhood, but we have other schools that should be, we have Rosemonts that should be everywhere in our district, not just here. You're right, Hogg and Reagan have that opportunity. Principal Casco over there at Hogg is doing a great job. He just got $10,000 for technology upgrade through a competition. I know he applied to be a STEAM school, and my understanding they didn't get it this year, but he's going to apply again. So we have to give families and we have to give students at those schools another opportunity, an opportunity to be able to study a different program that's going to increase our student and diversify our student population. Because if we don't diversify our student population, then we're going to keep facing this problem over and over and over. And there's all these schools in District 7 need help. I mean, I went to Arcadia Park. It's such a great school, and they're doing good work. And they have a library that's tied to them. So how do we increase the diversity there? They have a public library. Maybe that's a good option for a community school or for another program that we can use. So we have to be creative, and let's find those partnerships, and let's bring those other different individuals to the table, because DISD is not going to have the answer to every question. They're just not going to. And they're definitely not going to have all the resources, as you all well know, to be able to put all the programs that we want in place. But I think working together, we can be creative and we can find solutions to some of those schools.
Rob, thanks for your question. We had a good discussion about this afternoon, actually, so very relevant and timely. So I think it's wonderful when we look for research that shows us what can help in improving student achievement. And recently, I think there's been a lot of publicity around socioeconomic diversity. So I think it's a worthy goal. Interesting math fact here: when you do the math, we have 86% of our students in poverty, and so when you look at how many middle-class students that we'd have to attract into our district to reach Mike Kaprowski's 50-50 goal, it's actually 115,000 students, so pretty tough goal. I don't know that we're going to get there, but I think it's worth moving in that direction. I think there's a benefit for all schools there. So specific to a lot of schools that are in District 7, we have a lot of young families moving in, and so what are the things that we need to do to make them feel comfortable and feel that our DISD schools are competitive? It really goes back to what I talked about with the charter schools. It has to go back to safety, and it goes back to the environment, the feel of the building that's there, and it goes back to a rigorous college preparatory curriculum, so that people want to choose that. But let me add one more thing that I think is really important, and that is the principal. The principal, the campus leadership really sets the tone and makes the difference when that family goes to visit that school about whether they feel welcome and whether they feel confident. I can tell you from experience that my children have looked at going to schools that maybe we didn't know anyone that was going to that school, and knowing that principal and how that principal made us feel made all the difference in making us feel comfortable and wanting to go to that school. So, Rob, I hope you do send your kids to Hogg. They're getting a dual language academy next year, so maybe that's something your family could plug into.
This side of the room, the lady back there, next to. Mm-hmm.
As others have commented, thank you for taking the time, and thanks to everybody here for your questions and your interest. My question actually is connected to Rob's and comes out of a column that was written in the Dallas Observer by Eric Nicholson. Eric Cohen posted this on his Facebook page. The title of the column was, "As Trustees Will Learn." Hold on, I'm trying to get this thing so I get the title right. Fixing Dallas schools means fixing segregation or fixing racism. So my question to both of you is, what are you willing to do as school board representative to take on this issue that I believe still sits at the core of why we have the system and the failing schools we have?
That's an important issue. It's something that we need to address, something that the district has been trying to address for the last 40 years. So what can we do as trustees? And so I think it's really important to set the right climate so that people from any background feel comfortable in any school that they're in. That means addressing any sort of discrimination that might be going on, being cognizant of cultural issues that might be unique to someone from a particular racial background. And then I think it also ties back to what we just talked about, which is how much of this is race and how much of this is socioeconomics. So much of the research that's out there right now really points to poverty as being the driver and not the color of a person's skin. So are we really thinking about it in those terms? And there's actually been studies that have shown that it's not poverty per se, it's the stress of living in poverty. So a child that's poor, that has a very stable family life and supportive parents, will actually perform just as well as any other child. But a child that is experiencing homelessness, whose parent has been incarcerated, who's been taken away from their parents and moved through foster homes, and I work with those kids, and I can tell you, when I'm introduced to those children, they've been removed from their parents. They will move through a foster home and into a semi-permanent placement. When they're going through that transition, they're C students, if that. They have behavioral problems, they're acting out at school, and it's heartwarming to see them get into a stable environment and really come up to be A and B students, sometimes straight A students, who get the Model Citizen Award. So we want to have an understanding in DISD of those root causes. What's the root cause of what's the obstacles that are holding the children back from their success?
Correct. Thank you for your question. Poverty definitely is a reality in Dallas. We know that there's a growing disparity in the economics here in our city, and with respect to the people who are making on the higher end of the income spectrum and those that are making less on the income spectrum. And one of the things that we also know is that there's a lot of students, and in Dallas, we're talking about racism or we're talking about race, that we know, if we take a look at the numbers, 70% of DISD students are Hispanic or Latino. 22% of them are African American. So we have over 90% of a school district that is a minority school district. So that's just fact. So the way I think one idea and one thing that we can do is really we have to have conversations and we have to listen. But it's not going to be a conversation just internally here. It's going to be a conversation that we have with our city officials. It's going to be a conversation with state officials. And I really believe that we have to give input from other individuals such as churches, nonprofit organizations, things like that. Because if we're really going to have an honest conversation about race and class in our schools, then we really need to make sure that we broaden sort of the umbrella, make sure that we're welcoming as many people as possible. I spoke to a principal, an assistant principal at Bowie Elementary School not too long ago, and one of the things that he mentioned is that they have a struggle with poverty because they have to go across the street to an apartment complex and get people out, get students out, children out of dangerous environments so they can go to school. So there are different challenges that are going on our campuses across District 7 every day. But I think if we have input, if we listen to folks and we're able to find those partnerships together, we can make a change. But it has to have an honest conversation and we have to be able to listen.
Okay.
She has. She has.
Question, actually. Good evening.
Good evening.
Put my glasses on. My name is Sylvia Lagos, and let me start by stating something that you already know. Constituents are the people politicians have been elected to represent. And what we lack is a mechanism by which ordinary citizens can communicate directly to their elected officials on key issues. This gap may be one reason why many citizens are disenchanted with and alienated from our government and our democratic processes. Citizens believe they have no control over their destiny, so why bother trying? With a system of establishment candidates. Thus, this has opened the door to anger against the status quo, as we have witnessed in our current presidential election. So my questions to you are simple. How do you specifically propose to restore the confidence lost by ordinary citizens, your constituents? What actions will you take to ensure that you will be accessible to your constituents once elected and represent all the people of District 7? Not just the ones that supported you, the wealthiest or interest group, but the people of District 7.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Lagos, for being here, and thank you for your question. I think you hit the nail on the head. You're right. If elected, we're all here to represent not only the people who voted for us, but all the people who live inside District 7. And that's why I'm running. I'm not running to represent just one group of individuals. I'm running to represent all the neighborhoods that surround our 31 schools inside District 7. And ideas, you asked for specifics. I think there's a couple of things that I would like to propose. One is that we need to make sure we keep having meetings, and thank you for organizing this event. We have to continue to have town hall meetings with our individuals, and we have to spread them out. We have to go to different parts of the district. We have to go to Cochrane, that's far west on the other side of Loop 12. We have to go down to Stockard or down to Henderson, which is also at the southern tip of this district. We have to make sure that we're covering Bowie and all these other schools, and Lanier, that's just on the north of 30, that's part of District 7. So we have to make sure that our approach is speaking to individuals and really dedicating ourselves and our energy to making sure that we're communicating with those people. So we have to have those town hall meetings. We have to go to PTAs. You know, the great thing about District 7 is we have some passionate parents, but there's a lot of other schools that don't have as passionate parents as other schools in District 7. So how do we reach out to those individuals? We have to leverage technology, whether we do that through webinars, whether we do that through social media, or innovative outreach strategies like parent academies, but that's what we have to do. And we also realize that District 7 is diverse and very unique. You know, we have families that have a language barrier. So we have to make sure that we're able to communicate in their language. Not just have, you know, it's great that we have a translator here, but it's also great if we have a trustee that can speak to the parents in the language that they prefer. And being bilingual, I think that's a unique skill for me. Y yo pienso que es bueno porque podemos hablar en el idioma para los papás para que puedan entender. Y eso es importante. Because sometimes they want to hear the information in their own language. But we have to make sure that we're being creative and that we're reaching out as many ways as possible and leveraging technology to make sure that we can answer questions and be responsive to all the constituents of District 7. Thank you.
I would agree that there's a lot of avenues now that we can communicate with parents these days, electronically through social media. But I think your question really gets to more than that, of just the mechanism by which we're communicating. I think you're getting to the independence of the particular candidate, right? And whether that candidate can actually represent the parents, the teachers, the taxpayers, the stakeholders in this district. And so I think that one thing that I've shown in the last 18 months or so is that I do represent and have been an advocate for parents and teachers when they've been concerned about over-testing, or they've been concerned about these unintended consequences from TEI and other policies, and I've tried to make that known. My campaign is a grassroots campaign. My contributions are coming from the people of Oak Cliff. That makes me unique in this race, and that gives me an independence in listening to constituents and being able to vote and do the right thing for those constituents without being beholden to any special interest, any political action groups. And it's super, super important in making sure that the trustees on the board are there for the students and not for any other reason.
This side? No, which side are we?
Hello, my name is Christian Buena and I attended Hector P. Garcia. And my question is, after this, would both of y'all run for superintendent?
That's an easy answer. No, I'm not going to run for superintendent, although I have spent a lot of time leading change in organizations, and that's exactly what the superintendent has to do. But I'm not running for his position. I expect to hold that superintendent accountable, and I can tell you that because I have been there doing that job, I know what's an excuse and what's not an excuse. I know how to set the bar very high and to make sure that the superintendent is doing everything that he can to get the needle and student achievement moving forward.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you for being here for your question. And at going to Garcia Middle School, it's middle school, right? Yeah, it's a good school. So no, I have to answer the same way. I'm not running for superintendent, nor would I ever want to be superintendent. That's a very unique set of skills that he does. Dr. Nojosa has been doing a good job. The survey has shown that the sort of morale has been turned around at DISD, and that's really important because that impacts our schools, that impacts our students, and that impacts the teachers as well. But you're right, we have to work with the superintendent. We have to make sure that we also hold him accountable. If we have programs or initiatives that aren't working, then we have to make sure he's making a decision to stop that. And it's really important for me because I'm the only candidate on this table today sitting up here that has family in District 7 schools. I have family in 6 of the 31 schools inside District 7. So I want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can, not just for one part of the neighborhood, but for all parts of the neighborhood, because it's important. Because we can't be comforted by the fact that only one school does well and the other schools don't. We really have to make sure that we're working towards that. And I'm very proud of my public service because I think building coalitions and being able to bring stakeholders to the table and having those conversations, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's what we need more. We don't need to have individuals who don't want to work with other people, who don't build coalitions, and don't know how to advocate for our students in Austin, Texas, or Washington, making sure that we're getting for funding because public, the party in power has consistently cut public funding. So we want to make sure that we're not doing that. We need an advocate to do that. Thank you.
Buenas tardes. My name is Alan Gonzalez. I grew up here, born and raised in Oak Cliff. For now, I live in South Oak Cliff. I went to James Bowie, graduated from Adamson. And part of the great questions that you guys heard are my little kids that I brought into civic engagement. We always talk about the importance of getting them engaged, and this is hands-on. So. It goes back to what Christian wanted to ask, and I work with my kids. I have about, right now, 530 families from the Oak Cliff, West Dallas area. And what he means with running for superintendent is that how long are you going to be around? Because part of the concern with our kids is this idea of touchable. All of us can understand data. Not all of us, those who have the privilege of an education can understand data and how we're very data driven. And sometimes we focus so much on our weaknesses as what we got to fix instead of focusing on our strengths and what we can move forward with, what works in our community. Now, my main concern as an advocate for my kids at this moment is how touchable, this is one of my favorite quotes when it says, anyone can understand an issue and find or talk solutions with those who walk with the community to find solutions. My question is, what does it mean to be a touchable trustee for my community? Because that's the beginning of finding solutions. You don't ask these kids what they want to be when they grow up. You ask them what problems they want to fix. And that's what we're here for. So thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question. You said what problems they face and how we can help them, or what was the question? Okay, thank you for answering the question. I think to be a touchable trustee means that we have to be accessible and that we have to be bilingual. Because if we're going to be honest with ourselves and be able to communicate with all the families in District 7, we have to have that ability and that skill. We also have to be approachable. We have to make sure that we're involved in the community. And one of the great things is that we have to make sure that we have a trustee who's walked in the same footsteps as many of our students walk here today and as many of the parents do. And I feel I'm that trustee. I feel that I've been able to walk to the neighborhood. I know that we have issues at Sunset and we have a practice field that's behind Country Burger. I get that, we have issues there. I know we have issues, at different parts of our community. So we have to make sure that we're approachable. We have to make sure that we're available to the community. But more importantly, I think you're correct. It's not just about data. We just can't have data driven. And some people, that's all they want to focus on is data. I know data. I work for corporations. I know data. Well, schools aren't corporations. Schools just aren't data. There's communities behind those spreadsheets. There's communities behind those numbers. And we have to make sure that we're also focusing on some of those details of the community. We have to make sure that we're focused on the students, because if we don't empower parents and if we don't empower the students themselves, then we're going to be in a difficult situation. So to me, being touchable means accessible, means being bilingual, and means that we can coordinate with partners and coordinate with different organizations and partner to get things done in DISD. Thank you.
I would say that the being touchable and accessible does mean making sure that you are available to parents, to teachers, to other stakeholders that want to get in touch with you. One of the things that I want to do as trustee is to form an advisory board and to bring in representatives from different constituent groups to make sure that all voices are represented. So not just the individual, perhaps there's a parent who would like to reach out but doesn't feel comfortable in doing so, but maybe they're part of a PTA at a school, or maybe they're part of LULAC or something like that, and then they would be able to have on a regular basis meetings with the trustee to bring up issues. Just in terms of understanding, I think that's a concern for people to say, well, do you really understand my walk or what my family is going through? And so I want to talk about a couple of experiences that I've had over the last 14 to 20 years, I think that really helped me to understand. I'm middle class, as is Isaac, and so we are coming at this from that background and having resources as parents. But I can tell you that my children have gone to very, very diverse schools. They've been one of maybe 5% Anglo in that school, and schools with pretty high levels of poverty. And my children's friends have come from circumstances very different from our own. Some of them live very, very close to us, some of them far away in Pleasant Grove, and I've gotten to know their friends. My daughters have been invited to their quinceañeras. We've walked through this together. I've helped my daughter's friends apply for college because their parents didn't know how. And it makes you realize that and understand that these families and these students that, for example, want to go to college need a little more help than students that come from families where both parents are college educated. So that's really important. I want to go back also to my experience with Dallas Casa, because I'm working as the advocate for those children, again, from backgrounds very different from my own, and just being able to be like a parent or a guardian to them really helps you understand what's happening in their world. Y yo puedo hablar español también.
Let's have a conversation.
Gentleman in the black hat on the end. Michael, the gentleman in the black hat on the end over there.
Hello, my name is Andrew Goldsmith, and I've worked in District 7 since 1988 as a community liaison. And I have a twofold question. One to you is, with the feeder pattern from Arcadia Park, Stevens Park, and City Muir, which you just mentioned, Mr. Faust, you mentioned that a couple of times, all those schools feed into Pinkston, and you're not the superintendent that covers Pinkston. So I was wondering if, because when I talk to parents from Anson Jones and Stevens Park in La Loma, which is called La Loma, where that school is, they're really not real happy that they have to go to Pinkston High School. So one. Number two, in the 60 years I worked at Quintanilla from October that it was built. Stevens Park has always been the same, but they've added portables, or bungalows, like we call them, I'm from California. They've added bungalows. Anson Jones is the same way. Anson Jones, you speak about safety. At Rosemont, the children may have to walk to the cafeteria, but at Stevens Park, the kids have to walk outside to go to classrooms. The other day I was over there talking to a family, the young man told me, he said, now he's about 19 years old. He says that asphalt at Anson Jones, where they play basketball, is the same asphalt that was there when he was a child. So I'm wondering, with this bond money that came along with this area, how was it that at one point when I read that bond, Anson Jones and Stevens Park was a big selling point, that those schools could be rebuilt? Could you imagine what that neighborhood would be at Anson Jones with the new elementary school? And likewise, I know that we talk about engagement. I know Stevens Park has a lot of apartments, and most of the children who live in Stevens Park, which is adjacent to it, most of those kids don't go to Quintanilla. I say that because I work with parents, that was my job. I maybe 2-3 children who actually lived in the Stevens Park area. Kids went to school. Most of the kids who come from Quintanilla are bused from Arcadia Park. The neighborhood kids, all the kids who live in those apartment buildings. There's a lot of apartments there. So those are my two questions. Can you do something about the feeder pattern so these children can stay in our area, even go to Addison, Sunset, or Williams? And number two, when will Addison, Jones, and Stevens Park get into schools? Thank you very much.
Audrey?
That is a very good question. Let me address the Pinkston issue, both of which I think tie a little bit to the bond. The issue of attendance boundaries is addressed by the Attendance Boundary Advisory Committee, and so the question about whether the feeder patterns could be changed would be a function of capacity in the schools that they would be transferred to. But I can tell you that questions about Pinkston become the issue for the District 7 trustee to the extent that there are kids in District 7 that are currently being fed into Pinkston, and that was one of my concerns when I looked at the bond program that Mr. Foz put together as in his role as the co-chair of that task force, is that the future for Pinkston was undefined. That particular project had 10% of the bond funds allocated to it, but yet no one could answer any questions about what was going to happen with that school. It's meant to be a career and technology choice school magnet, whatever name you want to give to it, but no one could answer whether or not there would be core classes offered there during the day, or whether it would be the type of program where kids from all over DISD came in for half day or several times a week for career and technology programming. That's of concern, because what was going to happen, and we still are waiting to find out, what will happen to the students that are zoned to go to Pinkston and their particular neighborhood school once the bond program is executed and that becomes a career and technology center. So, very important question. Similar issue when it comes to Anson Jones and Stevens Park. The district recommended that Anson Jones and Stevens Park be replaced, and Trustee Cowan stated publicly at the next board meeting that they were so bad, they're the worst of the worst, he called them, that they could not be repaired, they had to be replaced. And then after that, the task force removed them from the list. And so I hope that Mr. Foz can explain why he did not advocate for those children in Anson Jones and Stevens Park Elementary.
Okay. Thank you so much for your question, and thank you for being an advocate for Stevens Park. That's where I went to school, so it is near and dear to my heart. We know that there's an ocean of needs within DISD. And we know that $1.6 billion in the bond is not sufficient to fix all our problems. And I understand full well that in a functioning democracy that we all have a voice. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean that we get everything that we want. But we have to keep working to make sure that we're improving all of our schools, like Anson Jones and Stevens Park. With respect to the feeder pattern, I definitely commit to you that as elected trustee, it's something we have to take a look at. Because if we have students that are in District 7 and then going to Pinkston, which is in another school district, then let's take a closer look. And let's not just kick the can down the road to the attendance boundary committee. No, the trustee needs to be engaged. We need a trustee that's engaged in all the decisions that impact District 7. And not just put it off on another committee and say they're going to take care of it. No, we want a trustee that's invested in our community and our schools. With respect to the facilities task force, I'm proud to have been on there. We had 27 members. They represented teachers, principals, different organizations. And with all the ocean of needs that are going on in DISD, we just couldn't pass the $4 billion in needs that we required, because that would be impossible. That would require a tax rate increase that many of us, quite frankly, probably would not support. But we did the best that we could, and we had individual meetings with different trustees and their appointees so we can hear about their issues and their problems on the ground. And with respect to Pinkston being an innovation school, if it is an innovation school, the great thing about innovation is that it's a school that's in that district. So that boundary, that attendance zones continues to be part of that. So no, they don't get pushed out to another school. They get to go to that school first, and then whatever left, the other students are able to go to that. One of the great things I like to always talk about is that we know there's no perfect process, but at least we have the opportunity today to have this conversation, because 57% of the people in District 7 voted for the bond because they want safety, they want security in their schools, they want programs, they want to make sure that we're giving our students every opportunity to succeed. And we should put aside those personal politics that people have and focus on what really matters, and that's student achievement. Thank you.
Thank you all. I think we're going to end on that note with the Q&A. I think we could probably stay here all evening, and don't leave though, we're not finished. I want to thank you all for being a fantastic audience and asking some really specific, cogent questions to our two candidates. I want to take this time also to thank our elected officials for being here, Methodist for helping to host this event, to the League for sponsoring this event, and if any of you would be interested in a photo opportunity, maybe some of our elected officials or former school board members would like to stay. I know our candidates may be able to stay for a few minutes afterward to talk to you one-on-one. And now I'd like to begin with our closing statements, and I believe Audrey is first this time with a closing statement.
So now we come to the part of the program where I tell you why you should vote for me. And I really think it boils down to skills and experience. And what I bring to the board is the combination of professional experience in leading change, understanding how to get results, to lead this district to reach its full potential. I firmly believe that DISD can be one of the best urban school districts in this nation. I will tell you what I did in my career, and these are the same things that we need to do, that I will do as trustee, and that is to set a vision and to set high expectations for our district, to work with the superintendent to create a strategy, a collection of elements that work together and reinforce each other to maximize results, to make tough choices about the budget, to put money into programs that are successful, and to say no to spending on expenditures and programs that get lesser results. So as a parent, I can tell you that I know the realities of day-to-day operations in our schools inside of what is currently a very political and bureaucratic environment. I am not a politician. I'm not here for politics in any way. I'm much more pragmatic and have a get things done sort of point of view. And so we need to take politics out of our school. We need to focus on results. We need to focus on letting good principals and good teachers do their job for those students and get the support in the schools for the students to help them achieve. We can do better for our kids. I ask for your support. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Well, first, I want to thank everyone for being here and really joining this conversation on education. I think it's important that we have a full crowd here tonight that's able and cares about what happens at DISD. I just want to make a couple of quick comments, and then I want to close with the story. You know, tonight you heard some opinions that were the same, but some opinions that were different. But if we're going to move our district forward, then we need a trustee who has a vision to make sure that we're on course to give the students everything that they possibly can do in terms of resources and make sure that they can do their best in achieving and succeeding in life. You know, I'm very proud to be the only candidate that stood with 57% of District 7 residents and approved this bond. Because without this bond, there's no security, there's no safety at schools like Rosemont. And then more importantly, those schools and those students suffer because they don't have the same educational opportunities. Without the bond, there's no career and technical education. We're not expanding pre-K at Peabody and at El O'Donnell. And we're not definitely going to improve our facilities to house those programs. Without the bond, we don't repair all these schools that we have in District 7. Many of these schools, and most of these schools are touched in one way or another. We don't repair and replace roofs. We don't fix the HVAC, and we don't fix the plumbing. And all that happens if we don't have a bond in place. So that's why I'm running, because I think it's important that we have a trustee that really has a vision to help our students succeed, that's invested long term. I have family in 6 of the 31 schools in District 7. So I'm going to be invested not only the next 2 or 4 years, I'm going to be invested the next 6, 10, and 12 years. And that's important because we need to make sure we have a trustee that's focused on achievement and outcomes and not on theatrics. And it's also important that we put aside personal politics and make sure that we're focused on what's right for the students. Because one thing I always like to tell people is that if this bond fails, there's no do-over. Our children do not have a do-over in education. They have to wait another 2 years, another 5 years, and that's just unacceptable for our community. So I'll end with this quick story. I always like to talk about this 8th grader at W. Griner who's joking around during assembly. He's not paying attention. Sometimes it reminds me a little bit of what's going on here. Sometimes you sort of lose track and are elbowing people, elbowing your friends and not focused. But the speaker at Griner says, hey, you know, I'm from Oak Cliff. I came to Griner. I went on to graduate college, and graduate law school. At that point, the student sits up and starts paying attention. And the student looks at the stage, and it's a male Hispanic attorney. And the student says to himself, well, if that person is from Oak Cliff, went to Griner, and graduated college and law school, then I can do the same thing. And in 1989, that student was me. And I want to be able to inspire students, and with your help and with your support, we can inspire students from District 7, but we can also inspire students across DISD. So I ask for your support in helping keep the promise of a quality education and helping build a 21st century school district where our students can succeed, where every student can succeed in college or career. My name is Isaac Foz. I ask for your vote and support on May 7th. Please remember, #VoteFoz. Thank you.
Thank you. I think our candidates did a wonderful job tonight, right, everybody? Yay! This is one of the programs that the League tries to do to inform the residents of Oak Cliff about important things to all of us and to help us to preserve the character of our community. We're having a symposium on April 16th. We're having a joint project with Preservation Dallas on May 24th. So if you have an opportunity, please join us in some of our other activities. Look on our website and you will find them listed. I want to thank again our candidates. I want to thank all of you for being here. We really do appreciate your participation, particularly on a stormy night. Thank you.